Devang sitting with me. Devang comes from Atom. Now, Devang, like Atom is a payment service provider company, better known payment gateway service provider, and they deal with credit card data, credit cards day in, day out. So what I'm going to ask Devang is to share his experience, his thoughts around what measures, like what do they do when it comes to credit card data security? How do they encourage end consumers to confidently share their credit card data along with the websites? And what measures does Atom take to secure the end customers' data with them? Devang.
Payment security, I think if you look at the single most last couple of weeks, we have seen a lot of news items that have been appearing, both related to internet fraud, typically in terms of one, let's say some set of people had defrauded a customer by withdrawing almost around 1 crore of funds from current account and transfer to their respective accounts. And again, if you look at the second kind of frauds that have been occurring across, this is typically the frauds that have occurred in US, typically talks about card skimming and other things. So if you look at heart to heart, today all of us use credit cards, all of us have debit cards. Security is the question, security of our card data is the question that pertains to all of us. It's not something which is related to something people who are there on, who are e-tailers or who are providing websites and who are providing internet commerce or electronic commerce, but it pertains to everybody, every individual across the country and every individual across the street also. Having said that, if you look at the security of credit card data has been paramount, both in terms of what the way regulators are seen in India or as well as the schemes, the way that you look at it in US and other countries. But the way the frauds are, because technically if you look at, when you define a fraud from a credit card perspective, you're typically talking about three things, because from an e-commerce or a commerce perspective, you're talking about, you're talking about a technology fraud, typically in terms of a lot of things which are happening technologically, where things are happening technologically. Second is in terms of fraudulent cards, where you have genuinely people who have stolen the card data or typically skimmed the cards and are using it elsewhere across the global geographies. And third is typically related to service-related frauds. I think technically what I'm going to cover out here is not going to talk about the other two kinds of frauds, because we're talking clearly about technology-related frauds. One, what are technologies we're looking at preventing this kind of frauds across from happening more and more. Now, as an e-commerce website or maybe a service provider, today your strategy is defined not only by internet. You're clearly using a multi-channel strategy today, and any decently sized e-commerce company has not only an internet commerce presence, but also has a presence in terms of a call center where they're doing commerce, as well as maybe going forward, you're going to have a card on delivery option where you're going to provide cards to the customers also. So if you look at security per se of the card data and a card, overall is from a card angle, you need to look at things holistically, and you need to understand the fraud at each angle, each channel level. Because for example, if you look at internet, India again has a very, very large constituency in terms of the way payments are accepted. Everybody knows, for example, we have payment gateways for credit card and debit cards. We have net banking as an option for direct debit into bank accounts. We have, now you have IMPS as an option occurring from National Payments Corporation of India. Going forward, you'll have other options also coming in. You have wallets also there, prepaid cards also as an option. Now that is clearly on the internet side. Now if you look at, let's say for the IVR side, you have IVR-based payment options, interactive voice response-based payment options. Let's say on the point of sale vertical, on the point of sale side, you have again your point of sale terminals which are getting carried out with dongle or without normal GPRS terminals, which are going to be carried by your typically your partners, your logistics partners, to go around and do card on delivery to customer locations. Now each of these three angles poses three different kinds of risk across. When you look at the internet, I think what Sarabjit covered across earlier was, he was talking clearly about phishing attacks, farming attacks, a whole lot of attacks. I think if you look at the overall constituency, the constituency of attacks has gone up. People have been exposed to, for example, let's say a large number of emails we get from banks talking about not looking at any phishing attacks, not to compromise passwords and other things and going on those sites. And one of the most fundamental principles, which I think as a policy which you basically typically put on the website, is basically at least ask a customer basically to not, to ensure that they don't use or reveal their passwords to anybody else. But if you look at the way people are, because most of the times if you look at the way the security is compromised, this compromise is not done by hackers or anybody else. It's been done because of maybe a customer or a person compromising on their password, leaking out their passwords, or them storing their passwords at a specific place or specific location where the passwords are getting leaked, or people can second guess their passwords. You have over-the-shoulder kind of attacks where this can be taken up. Now, this leads to serious consequences because, for example, if you're looking at, let's say, a simple kind of a phishing attack on, let's say, a credit card payment site, you're clearly talking about credit card data being exposed. Now, the kind of security practices which are there in India versus globally is different. In India, for Indian cards, we have basically, for example, two-factor authentication thanks to RBI. You have V-by-V and 3D Secure and other things. But that doesn't stop anybody sitting out of US to use our cards. Because in US, you don't have a V-by-V or a 3D Secure mechanism. You don't have that mandate also. So as long as they have your card number, they have your expiry date, that's more than enough to basically reveal that data out and have the users and have the consumers out there use that on any website. Today, you have clearly rings operating not only, let's say in US, but elsewhere across. You have Russian rings, you have Nigerian rings, you have Chinese rings who are operating, syndicates who are operating out, trying to fish out and farm out card data from websites, from banks, and everywhere else. Now that is where the significance of the whole thing comes in. So one is basically the card data protection we're looking at clearly in terms of how do you prevent, let's say, a phishing attack from happening. Clearly in terms of something like a net banking, a lot of banks have implemented, let's say, you have a kind of a man in the middle kind of attack, people who hack into the website of the e-commerce retailer and man in the middle, they replace the values of the transaction itself. Now the only way to basically handle that is by using a kind of what banks call as the verification URL. You need to do and re-verify the transactions once again after the transaction has got successful, so that your chances of fraud and your chances of, because if, for example, if you've done a transaction for 10,000 rupees and only 10 rupees has got debited from a customer's account, and if you're not re-verified it, you would have shipped the goods to the customer, but at the end of it, you would have only received 10 rupees from the customer. Because somebody has replaced that 10,000 with the 10 rupee value in the, as a kind of a man in the middle kind of an attack. So that becomes, that exposes you to a huge risk out there. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these things happening over the internet. Second is basically in terms of, let's say, for example, IVR today, RBI has mandated multiple security standards in both internet as well as IVR. So IVR, we've seen one-time passcode which has been implemented by IVR. Although, yes, from the customer convenience angle, that has hurt the customer convenience big time because you're looking at customers moving away from that kind of channels. But at the end of it, as a security measure, yes, it is far more secure. But what we need to do, for example, another area where we looked at is what we have been implementing and exhorting our customers to do is move away, because today you want to protect your customers' card data. You want to have customers coming to your site again and again. We are talking about, let's say, tokenization checkout processes, wherein the card holder data, the card data is being managed by a secure provider, for example, someone like an Atom, who would basically store the card data on your behalf and allow a customer single click checkout kind of a function, so that for them, A, there is a convenience in doing the transaction, B, not only is convenient, but next time then they use the card again, they don't need to basically reveal their card data, thus not exposing them to further risk in terms of card data leaking out or things happening out there. Now coming to basically RBI has of course implemented a two-factor authentication in India, but and on the same time we are the only country in the world where we are seeing SMSs coming out after every transaction. I think that has helped a lot of this. If you look at the last series of frauds that have happened around 2 weeks back, I think it's because of the SMSs which have been which have gone to the consumers, that has activated, helped the consumers go and stop the transactions. But there is, again, in terms of RBI, the bigger issue is in terms of basically there's no consistency in standards out there. There's something implemented for internet. There's V-by-V and 3D Secure for the same for IVR. You have an OTP for point of sale. Tomorrow, you never know what will come on the point of sale, because they're currently talking about pin at POS coming on the point of sale terminal. But if something changes out there, they could have some other security measure coming on the POS. So having 3 different kinds of security measures basically clearly confuses the consumer out there. I think that drives away the consumer from basically moving out of card and again moving back to cash, because as much as consumer values convenience, because we need to give them more and more convenience in terms of making the options. And yes, security is important for the consumers, but as long as you can give them convenience and security hand in hand, they would definitely start adopting the card, because that's what is basically the clear mandate or clear things seen typically in the Western side. Why would a consumer, let's say in the US, use a credit card versus basically in, let's say, in an Indian context? Clearly is defined by basically multiple standards like this. Second is basically if you look at a consumer behavior itself, B is in terms of basically recreating the trust in terms of the website, in terms of the data, how whether the cardholder data is going to be secure. I think as long as there's education and things have been provided for card security to the consumers, I think consumers start using their cards easily. On the second side, clearly is in terms of data protection. Typically from a company like us, for example, We are PCI certified, PCI DSS certified. PCI DSS is Payment Council International's data security standards. Now, these are a set of standards where it's a continuous audit process across the year, where our data centers, where our links, our payment gateway programs and everything are getting certified and audited time and again, both in terms of basically the internet traffic or the kind of traffic that is being generated, as well as in terms of the data, and as well as in terms of the access to the data within the premises. For example, do people within, let's say for example, within a company have an access to the data? Does anybody, can anybody break into our security firewalls and come inside and access data? Because if you look at, let's say companies like Heartland in US, where you've seen close to around 200 million cardholders' data had been exposed clearly around a year and a half back. Now, these guys were not PCI certified. Now, these are kind of checks and balances we have put into place in terms of certifying and ensuring that basically cardholder data is secure within our premises. In addition to that, again, what Sarabjit spoke about SSL and other standards in terms of security standards, I think we are very heavily spent on basically security, ensuring that there are security standards in place, both in terms of ensuring that it's not only protected by SSL, but also by right kind of firewalls which block basically unwanted traffic coming into the enterprise. Because for example, tomorrow if somebody is mounting maybe a denial of service attack or a hacking attack or something else, you want to be able to prevent that sort of an attack happening at the source itself. You don't want that basically, we don't want our customers to be exposed to any kind of risk. So that's the kind of seriousness we have put in. I think some kind of practices is basically, these are the kind of practices we are holding on the payments front. But there's equal amount of responsibility on basically the people who are running the commerce sites also. Because there are a couple of sites, couple of internet sites where they are capturing the card data and passing the card data on to basically a payment service provider like us. Now, in such cases, I think ensuring that the security of the transactions, the security of the card data is protected. I think it's paramount on those people, on the company itself, to ensure the entire the web infrastructure is ring-fenced to be able to ensure that nothing else gets inside. You can't have 100% security, but you have to ensure that the cardholder security is maintained out there. So I think that's basically some of the mechanisms which are looked at in terms of ensuring that there is a cardholder security, there is a card data security, as well as a certain amount of ways in which you can prevent frauds.
Ashish brings in the legal angle. So legal angle is always exciting because it's like brings all mysteries along. Whatever you know about legal, there is something which these guys will come up with, which is like we never know. So Ashish brings in a lot of experience around that. He has worked with eBay in the past, and now he's heading the legal of Reliance Industries Limited's Media and Technology group, specifically focusing on the 4G applications. So let's listen from you, Ashish, in terms of what's your take on the entire subject.
Thanks, Sarabji. So I think I would see myself as a dessert, which is served at the end of the meal. So, which I mean, some people have seen the meal, they have taken the meal, so they feel full about it, so they may not be able to digest. And some people, I'm sure, will be enjoying this. So, you know, I actually take it forward from where you had left that. You know, while you were marketing about the SSL and say all the benefit from a business standpoint, I'm sure we would be aware of that under law it is mandatory for certain kind of the activity which you do online. It is required that all the internet companies' website deploy SSL technologies as and when they have to deal with certain kind of information on the net. Now, if you see security aspects on internet has become the prime agenda, not for the business people or for the conferences, but also for the government. Now, if you see our recently announced National Telecom Policy of 2012, which was tabled in the Parliament by Kapil Sibal, is that it starts, the first thing, the objective of that policy starts with the word to actually provide a secure network, secure way of telecommunicating to India or to all the people. Security has been, if you actually do a Control F in that document, security would be the most frequently used word in that document. So it's not only for the business standpoint, also for the government, security has actually become the key aspect, And while we all feel very secure these days to see that, we actually go online and to buy stuff online, I think while we should, congratulate and we should commend the industry, we should not also forget to clap for the government and for the laws which they have made to basically give a good legal ecosystem around the business. We have Information Technology Act, which was passed in the year 2000, but it was recently amended 4-5 years back. It also gave us a good legal ecosystem in terms of the data protection, in terms of, how do you make sure that the intermediaries who are the payment website or the classical e-commerce website are accountable for the security of the end consumer. So with this, what I think is that, I would not take much time. What I will do is that I will brief you about that, what are the various laws without going into the nitty-gritties and section numbers, which actually have some play on the e-security data protection, and what is basically confusing or let's say conflicting in the laws. What are the offenses on a broad sense? How should you as a consumer or a victim or you as an entrepreneur, how are you affected? And what you should be doing if you are encountered with an e-fraud on your business, okay? And then I will end it up with some kind of recommendation that what do's and don'ts for entrepreneurs as well as for the investors, because most of the people here in the audience would be depending upon the venture capital funding, PE funding for the growth of your business. Now, to start with a brief introduction on the legal ecosystem is that we have Information Technology Act, which I think is seen to be the parent act for most of the internet activities. And when we are talking about exchange of the payments over internet, we have RBI, who actually governs the aspect through your Payment Settlement Systems Act, which is also a new baby in the legal world. This act was passed in the year 2007, but the actual rules which impact you to basically exchange the money online came into place only 2 years back. So, these are the various laws which actually come into play when you have to provide security. They mandate what kind of security have to be there. Then under these laws, you have various rules which actually talk about what kind of various standards of security, what are the various do's and don'ts in case of security is breached. These are basically for your intermediary guidelines, which were being passed 2 years back. We have a specific law on the data protection, although the perception is that India don't have a robust data protection law. But if you ask a lawyer, I think we have a very good data law. The only problem is that India has good laws, but the enforcement is not good. The day it starts to get enforced, I think everybody will have to actually pull up their socks and have to really invest into these ecosystems. Now, when we talk about the security, the first aspect which comes into our mind is that what should be the security standard? Are there any minimum security standard mandated by the government or under any law which you have to deploy? Now, as I said that we have multiple laws to basically talk about the same event, like under Information Technology Act is one. Then you have Reserve Bank of India. So if you are online into merchant banking, stock broking, advisory, then you are under SEBI. So everyone would have their own kind of respective rules to ensure that the industry players have their own bit rates for the encryption. Now, if you see under the DOT license, which is to ISP, the bit rate which is allowed is your 40 bits, right? Beyond that, if you have to put any bulk encryption or any sort of let's say encryption, the ISP need to go back to government and to take the approval. While if you are into bank, okay, you can do up to 128 bits. Although I know people have started to go up to 256 bits now. But if you want to go beyond your 128 bit, you need to go to RBI. But do you still have to ask your ISP to go to the DOT? So these are some of the conflict of laws which actually come into play when you go into the T's and C's of the regulations. So those are things which you have to consult with your lawyers and to get the understanding that what are the standards up to which bits and bytes you can do that, and if you want to exceed, what are the right approvals which you have to take from the government. Now, having said everything, let's say that if you are faced with a bad day, okay, either as a consumer or as an entrepreneur, okay, that there is an instance of fraud, okay, you have deployed best of the technologies. And like what Sarabjit said, you may, deploy the best. You may not be able to avoid the really, really bad boy, okay? But let's say something like that happens. So now you as an entrepreneur, I am sure that you are not going to spend night with a sound sleep. I am sure you are not going to spend your day making presentation to get the funds from your venture capitalist, okay? If you are investor, I am sure you're not going to now ask about what is the top line, bottom line. All of your energy will actually go to find a right lawyer and to understand that what bad things you have done. Now, how are you going to now rectify it, correct? Now, I think the important aspect is that we should be prepared, okay? We should be prepared that it may so happen that you as an entrepreneur or your business may also be affected, okay? If you are prepared in advance, I think it would be a cakewalk for you to really handle that situation. If you are not prepared, then in the previous your section, Samarjit was saying that how a business went down because of some bad strategies. It is not only about the marketing strategy; it's also about bad planning from a legal standpoint. Can also kill your business. And I have seen, I don't want to name those businesses, but I have seen the businesses going down sheerly because of lack of proactiveness when they were building their business, because their focus was just to get the valuation done and just to have a good, let's say, marketing plan, but zero investment, from a legal standpoint. And if you ask me who were their lawyers, the answer is very simple. They had only one lawyer called as Google.com, okay? Now, if the offense has happened, it's a criminal offense. Now, what are the laws which talk about the offense? You have the entire laundry list of your sections under Information Technology Act. Now, few of the sections, you can easily get a bail from the police. Under few sections, you will not get the bail from the police. You have to basically go to the court to get the bail. And please understand, we have one magical section under Information Technology Act which talk about cyber terrorism. Now, it is very broadly, the law has been, drafted extremely broad, and the teeth of the law is basically life imprisonment. Now, I have not seen, apart from a hardcore murder or, your terrorist kind of activities, in these kind of statutes, I, as a lawyer, have seen life imprisonment. But in Information Technology Act for cyber terrorism, there's a provision for, life imprisonment. These are not implemented till date. We are all in our honeymoons phase because, as and when, thanks to the new inventions in terms of 4G spectrum, all the stuff like that, when internet becomes a default mechanism for people to do business or to communicate, we as entrepreneurs have to see the security from a legal standpoint also very, very seriously. And also, you do all the business. You store the data of customer. I go online to buy, maybe my iPad, my shoes, my watch, rose for my wife, or whatever. You are custodian of my information, right? You have my name, you have my age, you have my demography, you have my passwords, you have my credit card information, You are a trustee of that information. Now, if one way to breach the trust, is that you give the information out to someone. The other way to breach the trust is you secure my information in a very shabby form, right? Now, if, let's say, because of your laxity, something happened, you would be straight away exposed to the criminal liabilities, And for investigation, how are you maintaining the data? Let's say tomorrow you have a cop who rings your bell and say, okay, I have a complaint from so-and-so, let's say consumer. That's enough for you, right? He will come to your office with, 4, 5 your cops and all. And if you are not able to satisfy him that you have stored the records in appropriate form, you're gone. You have to spend ages because the law depends upon evidence. Law is blind. You need to prove your innocence or you need to prove other one's crime. What is your ecosystem? What are your processes to store the data? Let's say if you have to give the data for any litigation inquiry, how are you going to give the data? Have you thought about that process? I don't think many of you have thought about it. I know so many companies who have lawyers, they have not even thought about it, correct? But just wait for 1 year. I mean, Reliance come out with 4G. Other people come out with 4G. Let internet become the default mechanism. I think everybody would be spending more time at that point of time, not thinking about business, but about how to come out with the legal issues. So I think my advice to entrepreneurs is that let's not overlook the legal aspects. I know India is not a litigious yours a country. I know press is not focusing much about the people who are going behind bars or who are being arrested. But let's start focusing on the legal aspects of the business, the way the actual same day you get the idea, right? When you go to an entrepreneur, I mean, or say a VC funder, I'm sure the first thing which he asks you to sign is an NDA. He is more aware about investment, your safeguard, than you are aware about how to safeguard your idea and your business. And if you are investing into a company, if you are investor, you must conduct the due diligence beyond a simple security due diligence, that what are the risks on this company? What are the risks on the directors of this company? Now, if you invest into the company, I am sure you are going to get a board seat. Now, you get a board seat, but you are not doing the day-to-day business of the company. Just because you get a board seat, there is a threat of you being arrested, you know. And if there is a claim against the company and the company has not, let's say, taken efforts, your entire goodwill, you know, you said that you can spend 20 years to make the brand image. But if you are not able to come out and you say, okay, because of bad processes, bad legal planning, your CEO behind bar in Tihar jail, you know, I think that is enough for you even to spoil the entire generation career, okay? So that's my advice, that, you know, I mean, for each stage, you have to be careful and take the advices. Keep the security on top of your mind, because you are the trustee of my information as a consumer.